Hello, KFC SuperCoaches. It's season 2023, and today we're just talking one thing, and that is cheapies. They're the most important thing in your side, and we've got our Cheapie Bible guru with us today in Trent Copeland. How are you, Copes?
I'm going well. How dare you call me a guru of any sort? I am a hack. That is what I am. In cricket terms, in footy terms, it's all the same. But I can't wait, to be honest. I caught a bit of a glimpse of the trials yesterday while we arrived in Brisbane for a Shield game up here. And, some exciting names floating around under that 350K barrier. So let's get into it.
100%. We're going to run through the top 20 most popular cheapies and give our verdicts whether you buy, avoid, or just watch and see what happens in round one teams. Obviously, that's crucial. Copes, you're up in Brizzy for the Shield game. Can you tell us what's happening there?
Yes, playing against Queensland, and thankfully all of their superstars that play for Australia in Khawaja and Marnus and the like are all off in India. I'm sure everyone's been watching that over there. So, yes, we're coming up against Queensland. Must-win game for us. I don't know whether we can mathematically still make the final, but, yeah, last three games are massive. So, looking forward to that at the Gabba starting tomorrow.
Huge. Well, let's run through the 20 most popular cheapies. First up is Josh Schuster. Now, he is the most popular cheapie for a reason. He's going from playing 43 minutes as a bench utility to playing 80 as the starting 5'8". That said, on the weekend, his SuperCoach score was not good. 17 points. Still, watching that game, I thought he looked okay. He had a hand in a few tries, but didn't end up getting any assists or any points for it. So he looked okay. We wanted him to go better than he did, but he was still solid enough. I'm certainly not trading him out. Your thoughts?
Yeah, my verdict is, God, I hope people watch that and don't buy him. I hope people just go away from him thinking he's no good, because he's an absolute lock for me. I'm pretty sure either he or Hopgood, whatever you want to call it, are going to be, who I'm sure we'll talk about shortly, are going to start on my field, whether it's a reserve in the 5'8" slot or as my second row 3 slot as well. Look, 18 games, I think it was, at an average of over 60, as a rookie playing on an edge out of position, this guy's got the goods. So you add in a healthy Tom Trbojevic at the fullback slot to this team that we saw over the weekend, and I think there's points galore to be had there. So lock him in. The kid is so talented. The verdict is a buy 100%.
Some of the touches on the weekend were really good. I know he didn't get the try assists necessarily, but he was involved in a bunch of tries. And that no-look pass where he just attracts a bunch of defenders and then throws it out the back tends to create tries. And now try contributions weren't included in those SuperCoach stats that we've got up on our site right now. So he very well could have got a couple of those and his score could have been a fair bit better. And of course, he didn't play that many minutes either, so there's nothing to worry about with Josh Schuster. Next up, Jermaine Hopgood. You just mentioned him, 59 points on the weekend on the back of an awesome All-Stars. This guy is coming off being one of the best New South Wales Cup players, but he could barely get a spot at the Panthers given how good their pack is and the two-time premiership winners. But this year, it looks like he walked straight into that lock spot at the Parramatta Eels.
Yeah, and he offers them some really good flexibility. They've got some injuries going around at the moment with Sean Lane and numerous others. Ryan Madison out of that pack early on in the season. But to be honest, I don't think it matters. I think he's in their best team, and I think he's shown what he's capable of, and what any of us nuffies who watch the New South Wales Cup and talk about the SuperCoach stars of the future a lot have seen for quite some time. So yeah, don't overthink this one. He's good enough to not only be in our starting squads, but I think a start in our squads up until the buys, where the Eels are phenomenal coverage of some of the crucial early round buys.
Yep, I agree. He can play edge or middle, so he's a real versatile guy for them and should be one of the cheapies of the year alongside Josh Schuster. Next up, Paul Alamotti. So a lot to like about him. Job security is great. He's basically made that spot his own. He's earned it on merit. So job security is good, which is very rare for a dead set rookie. Plus, he looks pretty damn good in actual NRL as well. 34 points on the weekend, and he kicked 2 goals as well, which I definitely wasn't expecting. And I know that he's a fair way down in that goal kicking pecking order. They've got guys like Burton, Flanagan, Avarillo can kick as well.
Yep.
We're not going to expect that for the rest of the year. But while this guy is not a real try-scoring centre, he's certainly a tackle-busting centre and a high work rate centre. You just have to get him in.
Yeah, I think you do. And the prospect of the Bulldogs being a much better offensive outfit with the likes of Kickow, a fully fledged off-season of Addo-Carr and numerous others in that lineup. And I think Alamotti and numerous others, Hayes Perham has dropped off the radar a little bit for me. But look, he's exciting. The fact that he was goal kicking in those trials tells me it's not the fact that he's a goal kicker that we're going to need for SuperCoach scoring. But it tells me the coach trusts him. It tells me the coach has belief in this guy is going to be around in our unit for some time to come. So that, to me, just is job security ticked off. And that's what we need at this time of year.
One guy who probably doesn't have that job security is Khan Pereira from the Titans. Now, stunning preseason, 6 tries in 2 games, 4 tries last night in that game for the Titans against the Dolphins. His job security is not good at all because he's got Brian Kelly coming back into that team. But he could have done enough over these trials just to lock that spot in. Some of those finishes were sensational. His try scoring in the Queensland Cup was ridiculous last year with 26 tries in about 20 games. SuperCoach-wise, look, he doesn't have that work rate that we're looking for, but certainly he's on a pretty good edge at the Titans. You'd think he crosses for a lot of tries. I've got him locked in for now. Am I worried about Brian Kelly coming back? Absolutely. Am I worried about his work rate? Absolutely. But still, bottom dollar guy for round 1 who's playing. I think I have to get him in there. And even if he doesn't play after round 2, hopefully he can play over that origin period or when injuries hit.
Yeah, there's a couple of guys in this frame I'm sure we'll talk about. But look, he scored 6 tries in 2 games. He's playing in a team that, if you look back at last year, overall, the Titans weren't phenomenal, and certainly to start the year. But rounds 20 to 25 and 26, they were actually one of the hottest attacking teams in the competition. So, guys like Tanner Boyd, David Fafita didn't look amazing the whole game last night. But certainly when they click, I think it's going to work really well. And a youngster like Khan Pereira, look, I'm worried. Jojo Fafita scored a few tries as well. And look, last night, tackling was exceptionally optional. Let me put it that way. In that match, I don't think either team were too fancied, the tough stuff. But it's one of those things where the obvious upside is there for him to, like any cheapie at the start of the year at bottom dollar, he scores a hat trick in 1 game. There's $100,000 that we're going to make, and we need it. We need it fast. And with the trades that we've got at our disposal this year, I think it's worthwhile starting with him.
Looks like all those guys you mentioned will play on that left edge with Tanner Boyd, who's a SuperCoach purchase, at halfback, throwing it to David Fafita, and then they've got Khan Pereira out on the wing as well. So it could be a profitable SuperCoach edge. But having said that, it is the Titans. We don't quite know what's going to happen. And Brian Kelly is to come back into that team. Next up, Charnze Nicoll-Klokstad. So it's been a quiet preseason for him. He didn't play the All-Stars game and only 15 points on the weekend. But to me, sometimes these guys who have quiet preseasons tend to start and hit the ground running in round 1. For me, that shows just how highly regarded he is there and that he has that fullback spot locked in at his new club, having moved from the Raiders to the Warriors.
Yeah, I could not be more confident in CNK. We saw it in his early stages at the Raiders when he was given the freedom. He looked like he was in a bit of a rut. A few injuries had maybe curtailed things towards the end of his Raiders career, but or as well as Xavier Savage coming on and obviously killing it. But I'm really confident. He's one of my, if I go with no guns in my centre wing, which is a prospect that I'm looking at right now, he's going to be the guy that is at the forefront. He's going to be the first pick to play every game. And I think the Warriors, particularly when they get the chance to play at home, I've been so impressed with what I've seen so far in a couple of trials, offensively that is. So with a healthy pack that looks much more forceful and someone like Tohu Harris fully fit, I'm excited about what he's got to work with Tamari Martin and Sean Johnson looking pretty good as well.
Yeah, I agree that fullbacks that you can stash at your centre wing are absolute SuperCoach gold. CNK is one of those guys, and so is the next guy on this list, Hamaso Tabuai-Fidow. Look, wasn't brilliant in that trial, but neither were any of the Dolphins last night. He still got 34 SuperCoach points. 5 tackle busts and a line break in there. So, look, there's not the base there for the Hammer. He's not that type of fullback who's going to make 20 runs per game. He's playing for a poor attacking team who are probably going to struggle this year. But at that price, having been a bench utility at the Cowboys last year, you'd think there's at least some improvement in him.
Yeah, look, I don't disagree with any of that. He has not been in my team once this preseason, and at this stage, I'm not tempted. Despite, me maybe not going with any guns in the centre wing, he's still not in there, and he has not been in there. Even in one of the best attacking teams in the comp in the Cowboys last year, playing full games at fullback, he never scored really anything more than 40. So in this outfit, I'm worried with no real offensive weaponry around him. The combination's not clicking, and also him not having a great work rate. I'm worried that it'll be a flop. Don't begrudge anyone from going there, and it's certainly if we don't get the cheapies that we want or need come Teamless Tuesday, then he'll be a guy that comes into that frame. But to be one of the highest ownership players in the entire game, I'm sceptical.
Some good points there. And if you are just joining us, we're running through the top 20 most popular cheapies in SuperCoach. We've said yes on all of them so far, and I think we're probably going to say yes on the next guy as well. Oh, you've said no on Hammer. I've still got him in there. One guy who is obviously really popular, Stefano Utakamanu, really good in that first week of trials. The next week came back a little bit with just 33 points. Still got the 10 runs. Not quite sure what his role will be, but he certainly is underpriced, having played through injury for basically all of last year.
Yeah, look, I am unashamedly one of his biggest fans, and it came on the back of, before he'd played an NRL game, hearing Freddie Fittler talk about him as an origin bolter for this season, talking 2 years ago. So, the obvious talent is there. We saw him when he was at his best, go on a run of about 6-7 games in that season where he scored, in an excess of 50 points at better than a point per minute. So, look, I'm optimistic. He's at my front row 2 slot at the moment on my field, which is the starting position every week. I don't know whether that's sustainable, particularly once they've got Clemmer and the like back into that outfit. I think he's probably looking at 40 minutes max. But if I can get 45 points out of that slot and spend up elsewhere where there's higher upside, that's my theory. So for that reason, I think with the built-in upside of if he plays 55 minutes being exceptional value, I think it's an absolutely yes, you're buying him.
Yeah, he's locked in for me. The job security is good. The problem with prop is that it's a tough position for cheapies because the guys usually generally they get bought through really slowly, whereas Stefano has had that big season in first grade already. So you would think that he can step up. Instead of playing 15 minutes like a lot of the rookies do, he can go straight into playing 40-odd minutes. So that sets him apart from the rest in that position, even though he's a little bit more expensive than guys like Franklin Pele or Tom Ale, who we might get to later on. Moving on to Ray Stone. It's a no for me. He's been really popular during the preseason. He started that first trial and did really well, but last night only played, he came off the bench and 23 points with 9 runs. And runs are generally not his thing. He's more of a tackler. So I'm saying no on Ray Stone. Put a line through him, but Tom Gilbert, on the other hand, could be a real purchase.
Yeah, I think Tom Gilbert, we're going a bit off track there given he's not a cheapie, but I think he's right in the frame. If you want to go cheap at front row, the dual position eligibility that he has and the work rate that we've seen at times before, I think he's right up there. And I agree with you. I had Ray Stone in there, and the dual position was going to be really handy throughout the buys, or if one of the guns like Harry Grant got injured at hooker. But at this stage, you can't buy him, barring a team list that comes out on that first week where he's he's named a start at lock and he's the only man in the frame and Gilbert's injured for some reason, I'm not going there.
Yep, he needs a lot to fall his way, that's for sure. Jack Howarth was really popular but didn't play that final trial. Looks like he's bowed out of contention as a cheapie. He's not an option for me, but looking at that back line with the injuries that they've got at the Storm, there are some guys there, including William Warbrick, who was on fire on the weekend. He's huge. He's won a silver medal at the Olympics with in the nines. He looks pretty damn good, and he could get a spot for round one.
Yeah, well, anyone who scores 2 tries in the preseason is certainly going to, win the coaching staff over and the confidence of his teammates. But yeah, I'm actually a bit devastated about this. I thought, given money talks, and when I think it was a 5-year, pretty big financial deal that they came to, the Storm and young Howarth, and the talent is undoubtedly there. Anyone who's seen this kid at lower levels knows that. I thought when Justin Olam went down, I thought he'd be right there in the frame to be playing at least sort of, if he wasn't in their best team, maybe playing, 4 or 5 weeks to start us off. And then Tarek Sims goes down. I thought, well, maybe he gets a chance to play on the edge, but that didn't happen either. So, yeah, unfortunately, it's a no-go, but hopefully he's one of those guys that can be our saviour throughout the middle of the season, because I think if he does play, he's going to score really well. So let's keep our fingers crossed there.
Another forward I'm putting the line through, unfortunately, is Franklin Pele. Now, I know he was great in that first trial, but then in the second trial, when all the stars were back in that team, only 19 points over the weekend. Played in jersey 27. Now, I don't know. Sometimes you get these really high jersey numbers, and it's because they've only got the quadruple X large in that jersey number. I don't think that's the case with Pele. The first trial was amazing. There was offloads, there was high work rate, there was everything, but I don't think he sneaks into that 17 for round one. And if he does, it's only as sort of a 15-minute bench prop. So put a line through Franklin Pele. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's really one of those things where it's more about the strength of the pack around him and the other players than, necessarily what he might be able to offer Supercoaches if he was to get some good minutes. So, yeah, I couldn't agree more. There's some really senior figures. That's a pack that is now more experienced with the addition of Kickow, those big guys that are going to roll through the middle. And King, that came on last year, has now become one of those big minute, still able to offer big impact guys. And I just don't think the minutes are going to be there. So, no, I'm with you there. It's an avoid.
Yeah, hopefully Pele becomes a cheapie during the season. I don't think it's going to be from round one. Moving on to Isaiah Katoa from the Dolphins. Now, doesn't look like he'll start round one, but Anthony Milford has not had a good preseason. Katoa could easily come in and start at 5'8". Look, before Origin, I think it's an absolute probability, and it could happen before then as well. So do you stash a guy like Katoa, who's come through the Penrith system? He's one of the best juniors going around. Set up a try last night, only 25 points. So didn't play big minutes, but set up a try with a line break. So the bulk of his points came from that single play. Can kick goals as well. I don't know if it will happen. They've got a Sarko there, but he can kick goals. He's not going to play round one. It's a tough position to stash a player at 5'8", but do you do it?
Well, it's one of those things where, so there's 2 of the most exciting Supercoach cheapies this season and in recent memory sitting in this Dolphins list. And what I saw yesterday is that they're not going to be anywhere near competitive with this team early on. I think they'll go with the vets, try and establish Wayne Bennett's game planning, their structures, teach the young fellas how to play the game. But we're going to see Katoa and Valence Tafare very early in this season, if not, most importantly, throughout the buys. And they are 2 guys, make no mistake, they are guys that are going to come in and score like seasoned pros in our game that we know and love. So he's not a guy that I'll be starting with, given the point scoring upside available. The only one that I would entertain as a below sort of 350K option in the halves is Josh Schuster if you're going with other options in the second row. So it's an avoid, but as soon as he comes in, think Ezra Mam last year, but in my opinion, a much better player and prospect. So I'm excited, put it that way, about he and Tafare, who we were going to maybe talk about later, but it doesn't look like he's going to get a start early on either.
Yeah, I like what you're saying about Schuster in the halves. I think that Tanner Boyd could be slotted in there as well, but you can slot him in hooker as well. So, look, interesting how you go in your halves, because you could go 4 guns there, realistically, and then 2 guns at fullback. And they're the hot positions for SuperCoach, the way that it's currently played. But you probably need 1 cheapie in those slots. So it's Schuster for me for now. We'll wait and see what happens. I'm going to play him in the halves. Yeah.
No, do you need one cheapie in there? Because, we sent out my team reveal last week, and I've gone a bit rogue, but my strategy is no secret. It's not rocket science, but I want as many players in my team to start the season that can score 100 on any given week. I don't care what the position is. And when I look at the guys who can do that regularly and the ones that are worth paying up for, there is no doubt in my mind, I don't care who they're playing against with the draw, Nathan Cleary and Nico Hines are in my team. I couldn't care less who they're playing against, what the team looks like. They're in. Cameron Munster is another one who I think, regardless of an opposition, I really want him in. And then you look at the other position guys there at 5'8", and everyone's on Dleahy, Dewey, as he's wanting to be called now again, and Matt Burton. So that, to me, has pushed Schuster to my starting second row slot, because I just want all of those guys with that huge upside in as often as possible. So it's interesting. That's part of the strategy and the tactics. I love it.
Thoughts on Hayes Perham, Copes? Because he's not quite a cheapie. He's 370-odd K, but he has been earmarked as the starting fullback for the Bulldogs, and he's played both trials there. He played the All-Stars and then played the trial on the weekend. Made a bunch of errors, but had some pretty good moments as well. Given the players that they have in that team, they've got Avarillo who can play there, a bunch of guys who can play fullback. Do you think he stays there for round 1? Surely, because Serraldo has backed him during the preseason, he has to give him a few rounds. But the way he's going, he could potentially drop out and be one of these traps.
Yeah, I think he's an avoid or a sell at the moment. And it's a couple of things. That job security is an issue. And given their ambitions this season, I think they won't give 6-7 games for someone that doesn't look up to it. Whereas in the past couple of years, I think they would have given, an extended run there, like an Avarillo, to find the feet at the level. I don't think that'll happen. And the fact that he's 370K, to me, I think we're going to have enough options, 330K or below. Even guys like Tommy Talau and numerous others that are going to play have that upside equally as much as Perham does. So to me, he's out for the time being.
Valence Taware is next on your list. You've spoken about him a fair bit, but if you don't know about him, he's been compared to Conrad Hurrell, and I think it's a pretty fair comparison. Won't play round 1. In fact, Jack Bostock has gone ahead of him in the pecking order, and you've got Jermaine Asako ahead of him in the pecking order for backline spots too. So I'd say he's two down on that pecking order. But can play centre as well. Look, he needs injuries to get in for round 1, but definitely a guy to keep your eye on during the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't be more excited about his SuperCoach prospects. So literally as soon as he is on a Wayne Bennett team sheet, and hopefully they're scoring points at that point, but he really doesn't need it. He is the... even think when I talked about my team reveal, it was a mixture of Conrad Hurrell and Siosifa Talakai from last year, what everyone saw and loved when he played in the centres. That's the style, but he's actually got a bit more pace and the try scoring knack that the outside backs of the common NRL teams these days really have. So I'm excited, but it's not from round 1.
Yeah, if you get a chance to watch his YouTube highlights, I suggest you take a look, because it's pretty impressive stuff. And as soon as he comes into SuperCoach, he'll be a gun, because his game is so perfectly suited to it, with the tackle busts, the runs, the tries, etc. It's all attack from him. Moving on to Viliami Fifita. Now, he's come from the clouds a little bit. Could get, or probably does get, a bench spot at the Sea Eagles. He's a young prop, bottom dollar, which is very rare. You've got guys like Franklin Pele, who probably won't play round 1. Do you spend the extra money on Udakamanu? Look, he's not an absolute lock-in cheapie for me, given that I don't think he's going to get big minutes. But he got 26 points with 9 runs and 12 tackles over the weekend in that final trial.
Yeah, he looks impressive, and the dual position is not to be sneezed at as well, given that we're going to have the need for. I don't know how much in depth you've gone on this with your previous podcasts and things like that, but there's a team on a bye every week, early on in the season, and there's going to be, everyone's talking. Well, you got to start with Tom Trbojevic. Well, the Seagulls have a bye in round 2, so it's one of those things where you've got to have. You can't just go the old guns and rookies approach and have, 2 guys not playing from the start of the year and be okay with that, because in round 2, if you have Josh Schuster, Tom Trbojevic, and or someone like Fafita or Kelma Tuolangi was the other one who really impressed me in the trial. They're all not playing in round 2, so you've got to come up with 17 players in round 2, forgetting injuries or suspensions, and you need to be at a strong point if you're without someone like Tom Trbojevic. So all of that factors in. I think he's an avoid to start with, but given the early bye, he might be a really nice, not first price change week in round 3, but he might be the round 4 perfect secondary downgrade of someone that's made a bit of money already.
Very true. You're speaking a lot of sense there. In fact, I might be trading him out right now after that tip there. Davey Moale is another guy at prop. A tough position for cheapies, but they do have some injuries at that club. So there are some spots opened. He was named in jersey 21 on the weekend, so we thought, look, he's out of the 17. This is not going to happen. But then on the weekend, he's banged out 56 points. He was on fire, scored a try. He may well have earned himself a spot in that 17 for round 1.
Yeah, I think this one might actually be the old Triple XL gear in the jersey number 21, because he is a massive unit. And, it certainly looks as though he is in the plans to play at least a 25-minute role off the bench. Unfortunately, that is likely the cap. Like when the Rabbitohs are at their best, Cam Murray, I think, is going to play, particularly in big games, I think he's going to play 70 minutes or more in the middle. And then you've got 2 80-minute edge back rowers. So the middle rotation, along with Totola, who can play pretty big minutes, it's minimal that is there as far as scraps. But hopefully it is big with impact, and Moale can certainly do that for us. So hopefully he's in the frame, and he's done himself no disservice. 56 points, I think it was, with a bucket load of runs. I'm excited about that. And I think at 230K, he's got to be in the frame.
Yep, 56 points with 14 runs. So very good in the preseason trials. The Rabbitohs have a tough start to the year in terms of the draw, but I think that actually suits some of the middle forwards. Certainly Cameron Murray. You're going to play him big in those. You're going to play him for big minutes in those tough games. I think Latrell's going to come to the fore. It actually suits him playing some of the better teams because it actually fires him up a bit more. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens at the Rabbitohs. But certainly if Moale is in that 17 for round 1, he's a big guy to consider. Also at the Rabbitohs, Isaac Thompson. So big try scorer in New South Wales Cup. Looks like he's got that wing spot locked in for round 1. But Tane Milne is due back from suspension in round 2. Is Isaac Thompson good enough to retain that spot ahead of Tane Milne? That's the big question. And I think, look, his trial wasn't amazing on the weekend, only 9 points. But word out of the Rabbitohs is that he might just stay in that spot.
Yeah, he's one that I'd really like to see at first. So I think given the scenario of what we're looking at, I think we're going to have enough cheapies around that price range where, if you start with someone that will play, and they don't have the start that you want them to, say Hamiso, you're starting with him at 330K, then you can go sideways to a Thompson if he stayed in the team for those, what are pretty difficult fixtures early on. And if he's kept Milne out of the team come round 3 in those first price changes, then you can maybe make that jump. And then with a bit of a horizon on some easier matches coming up for the outside backs to score some tries. So I think they'll still be one of the highest scoring offenses. So if he's in there as a starter at 300K, then, you'd be silly not to jump on.
Remember also that you've got your trade boosts early in the season, same as last year. You have 2 trades for each round, but if you use your boost, you've got 3. And I recommend using a few of those early in the season as well, just to get your side right from the start of the year. Then maybe you use a few over the bye period as well. But look, if you're like me, you'll be using them all up before then anyway.
It's like those little men that sit at the top of the screen all weekend.
Yeah.
Now that it's the modern game, I absolutely love it. It's rolling lockouts and there's flexibility, particularly with late outs and COVID and whatnot. But it used to be a Thursday night. Those little men would just be unusable. So no matter how much they talk to you, you couldn't use them. Now they're there, as well as a little extra, little reel you in trade boost to just get you going during the weekend. So yeah, I'd be amazed if you got the internal fortitude to be letting that go for the first 4 or 5 weeks.
100%. You've got to get a lot of things right to not be using at least 1 or 2 of those in the first couple of rounds. Yeah. Let's move on to Tyrell Sloan. Now, interesting game on the weekend. He's got 55 points, 3 line breaks in there. So this guy is outrageously talented. There are a bunch of tackle busts in there too, but also 3 errors. So, look, job security is pretty good for now, given that Cody Ramsey's out for the season. But if you're making 3 errors a game at fullback, some of them were costing, maybe not costing tries, but costing attacking ground. Look, you've got to question whether he actually stays in that team at fullback long term. Maybe he gets switched to the wing at some stage. And let's face it, I'm a Dragons fan, but it's a poor attacking team at the Dragons this year. Not quite Dolphins, but I don't think there's going to be massive points coming for the Dragons.
Yeah, I mean, Ben Hunt's a star. I think he deserves to get much more of the accolades that maybe come his way. But outside of that, it's looking pretty dire. The other thing is they have a bye in round 1. So you're not going to get a team list come Tuesday for that team. So it's one of those things where, much like I've said with a forward planning trajectory with a few of these other teams like the Sea Eagles, I think Sloan is a guy that you will look at come round 4. If he's played 3 games, he's got a low break even where even just taking the field in round 4, he's going to make some coin for us. So it's actually, if you look at things in a positive way, glass half full, we've got a nice little trajectory of where guys are going to be at this year to utilise, making sure you start with players that are more expensive with the prospect of scoring well. And if they go great, awesome, keep going with them. But if not, you make a bit of money from a downgrade to Sloan, and then hopefully he scores well for you and makes some cash after you've had a chance to look at him.
Let's talk some bolters now. We've gone through the top most popular cheapies. Let's talk some guys who have come from the clouds over the trials or you've just got a gut feel about. Let's just go tit for tat on this. Hit me with your first one first up, Copes.
Well, I mean, you've got listed there a few guys that are, scored some tries or things like that. But one from your team I want to ask you about is Ben Murdoch-Masila, who's been a late addition to the squad at the Dragons. 230K, dual position, I believe. It looks to me, certainly through the trials, that A, he's filling a positional need, but B, when he plays and he plays decent minutes, he's got some chops for SuperCoach scoring as well.
Yeah, he's looking pretty good. Certainly in attack, he's looking good, playing on an edge. So that probably means longer minutes, but less work. I like him at that price, but he has burned me in SuperCoach in the past. So I'm a little bit worried. Look, I mean, beggars can't be choosers for cheapies at prop, particularly for round 1. So he's certainly on my radar. In fact, I've got him in my team right now.
Yeah, I love it. What about the young outside backs? So you've got listed here on the run sheet, William Warbrick and Sean Russell. I had Dunster in my team reveal this week, and obviously he's not going to be there. So, are you looking at either of those two as early season prospects?
Yeah, 100%. Sean Russell, so a couple of tries on the weekend. Awkward price. It's not quite cheapy price, but certainly a guy I'll be considering. I think that side at the Eels will see a lot of points. Well, both sides at the Eels will see a lot of points with Mike Acevo on that other wing. But I think the Eels will have a lot of attack in them this year. It's an awkward price, but still, if he's named for round 1, you have to consider him.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on board with that. And I think it's a tough draw they've got early on. And certainly after the first 4 or 5 weeks, the Eels players are going to start to become really interesting to cover those early buys because they play in all 3 of the big ones, certainly from what I've looked at and tried to get my head around. So, those players from the Eels that start well are going to be super valuable.
You've got a couple of guys who are just above Cheapie range who you want to hit us with as well. Like Luke Garner.
Yeah, what about this mid-range, particularly second row, is starting to really perk up my interest because a lot of people think that they're onto a winner with certain players. And it's, you come into the best team in the NRL as Luke Garner has, and your prospects are to play big minutes. I think a lot of people just look at that as okay, tick, let's just get him in. But I haven't been impressed at all. If anything, I thought Zach Hosking outplayed him in that trial match. I'm sure, given seniority and the fact that they've got him over, he might play in that team moving forward. But he's one of the most owned players in the game, and he's a huge avoid for me. I don't know where you stand on him, and then I'll ask you about a couple more after that.
Yeah, I'm not 100% convinced on Garner at all. I'm worried. The big thing with him is that he averaged over 60 minutes at the Tigers last year. So you're not going to get huge game time increase from him. In fact, his game time may even drop. You're banking on the Panthers starting the season red hot and him scoring a bunch of tries. Of course, the Panthers got the bye in round 3. So it's going to be, when a lot of people are rising in price, he's not going to be at all. So I could be tempted by a couple of the other guys on this list. So hit us with the next one.
Well, there's a couple here that I really want to delve into, and they're low ownership players, but to me have much greater prospect of being season-long useful players, but also they're really scoring well. Teague Wilton, Eli Katoa at the Storm, and Nat Butcher, and maybe even Egan Butcher at the Roosters, if you want to touch on maybe your favourite there.
Yeah, I mean, I think Eli Katoa is my favourite. If he can nab that edge back row spot at the Storm, got a try in the trial yesterday. He has produced in SuperCoach in the past, but has gone off a little bit with, injuries, etc. But you get a guy who, with that sort of talent, moving from the Warriors to the Storm, you can expect some big attacking stats from him. So he's probably my favourite, but I also really like Wilton. 2 tries on the weekend. Looks like he's gone to another level compared to last year.
Yeah, well, I play grade cricket with Nick Stapleton, who's one of the biggest Sharks fans that you'll ever come across, captain of St George, who we obviously both played for, mate. And he is a huge fan, and I'm sure a lot of Sharks fans are, of Teague Wilton, and is pretty much adamant that it's going to be, Wade Graham playing off the bench and playing in a utility role, maybe even through the middle, or gap filling if there's injuries, things like that. So Teague Wilton, if he's looking at, in the price range that he's at, if he's playing 80 minutes in this good a team, I think, you could be looking at a guy that is a season-long keeper, not just, starting at value. So, yeah, I'm excited there. Nat Butcher's the other one who I think anytime he's played more than 65 minutes a game for the Roosters, he's a, elite scorer. He's up there with the best at the position. So you pay a bit extra for him, but obviously in one of the better teams in the comp, the prospects are there. So it's an exciting one. And I think, given, if you're not going with the Cam Murrays or Angus Crichton maybe isn't there and you don't like David Fafita, you could easily go down and have a dip at a couple of these guys and see which one pays off.
100%. Now, look, we've gone through the top 20 cheapies plus a whole bunch of bolters. It's been a pretty intense episode. Big thanks to Trent Copeland. Good luck in the Shield game coming up this week. What do you reckon your chances are?
Don't know. But hopefully the Blues, we haven't had too many wins this year, so we need to turn that around. Hopefully my picking of SuperCoach cheapies isn't as bad as my bowling. So no half volleys this week, no wides. I need to get it on the stumps, just like that Team List Tuesday. Hopefully it comes and helps us all out.
100%, and Copes will be writing the Cheapie Bible for us again this year, which will be up hopefully early on that Wednesday after Team List Tuesday. So it's one of the most read articles of the season, obviously. So keep an eye out for that. Big thanks to Copes. We'll catch you for our next podcast, which is going to be the Teams podcast next week, straight after TLT. We'll see you then.